Good morning. This is Rachel with Infused Meadows. I need to make some blackening seasoning, so I thought I'd bring you all along. I thought that I'd done that before, but I think it turns out I know I've done my onion soup mix, which I have been working on a different. It's still an onion soup, but I've changed a few things, so I'll probably be doing a video on that at some point soon, so that I can update you on what I think is a better version of it. I know I've done my. It's like a Cajun spice mix, and I know there's a few other spice mixes because I did the one set while I was doing my cranberry juice on the stove, because I got those done because it went with that night's dinner. So I know that particular one is a short, but anyway, I looked and it doesn't look like I'd actually given you all my blackening seasoning. So we're going to do that now. So what we have here, you can add these individually to a recipe that you're making, but by putting this all into a bowl and then putting it in a jar or an airtight container, it'll last you forever. Not really, but I dry most of these I've harvested from my garden, and I've dried them myself. So I know that technically these should last as long as you dry everything to where it's good and actually dry. These should last you at least 2 years. Now I grind as I go, so that way I can keep an eye on the actual product, and then that way if I see that something is showing moisture before it's been ground down, I can put that back into my dehydrator and then dry it back, until it's fully dried again. And then that way it can go back into storage for another year or two. Now, obviously, you can continue doing that, but the downside is that once you've reached that 2-year marker and you have to dehydrate again, you are going to lose some of the nutritional value that comes in your whatever it is that you have here, whether it's your peppers or your basil, your thyme. And you may lose a little bit of that flavor, because of having to re-dry it. So you always want to try to make sure that you get that dry done the first time, if that makes any sense. Anyway, so with glass, it doesn't expire, okay? The thing that you'll need to keep an eye on with glass are the lids. Because these can, you can chip these, they can start to rust if the coating comes off, and don't worry, that's not dirty, it's just stained from the cayenne. But that way, if you put it in plastic, and let's say you go right now and you get a fresh thing of, what you think is fresh garlic powder from the store, and it's in plastic, and you get home and it's got an expiration date on it for the next year. Okay, well, a lot of times it's the plastic that's supposedly expiring, and I think if you go do your research, actually, you'll find out that it's more of a leaching. Just go do your research, okay? Anyway, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But that's why I store in glass, okay? As long as you've cleaned your glass properly and there's no nicks or cracks and no way the air's getting in there, this will last you years. Years and years and years, okay? So that's just a helpful tent. It's Friday, y'all. I'm ready for Friday. Not really. I'll still be working all weekend. I don't really get days off. But that's neither here nor there. But that's why I do glass more than I do anything else. And so I encourage you to do the same. I don't care if you've gone to the store today and you bought a jar of mayonnaise. Wash it out and then just reuse that jar for your own, for your stuff. The glass is still perfectly good, and the lid can be, it's all washable. And you can reuse that. And that's what I do. Some of these I've bought the little jars myself. Others I bought the product that was in it. Doesn't mean I used it, but it was because, I was, that'll be the perfect jar for some of my little spices because, like my basil. I have a big jar that I keep the bulk of it in, and then I just refill these little jars like, oregano, which I'm going to end up changing that jar out because I've increased my usage. But again, that doesn't really matter. So I'm not rambling, but I am rambling. I'm just trying to encourage you to use glass. Okay. So just saying. All right, let's start this. So this is what I use for blackening seasoning. And I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of paprika, I'm going to use 1 tablespoon of cayenne, I'm going to use 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, and I'm also trying something new. I ground all this yesterday. I've added potato starch this time as my anti-caking agent. I normally use arrowroot, so we will see how the potato starch does and if it's better. So we'll see. Anyhow, we're going to go in with a teaspoon now, and I have a half teaspoon measure because some of these are half teaspoon, so that's why I'm going to do this. We're going to do 1 teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now, I grind my own, and then I just store it in jars, and that way I've got either fresh ground for what I'm doing, or I can use this. So that's 1 teaspoon of black pepper. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm not adding a whole lot because that leaves me room to still be able to adjust for any recipe that I make using the salt. Sorry, 1 teaspoon. But you can hold off if you want to, and that way you can control the salt 100%. Like I said, I don't mind this 1 teaspoon to this bulk because it still leaves room for me to add salt if I need to another recipe without overwhelming my dish. So I'm going to do a half teaspoon of my crushed basil leaves. I'm going to do a half teaspoon of my dried oregano leaves. This is just a cute little jar I found at a grocery store. And it actually was for oregano when I first got here and I didn't have my garden growing yet. And then I've not crushed this. This is my thyme leaves. Excuse my phone. But what I am going to do is just give this a light crush. I'm not going to, get a mortar and pestle out or my little grinder. There's no point in that. Alright, all you got to do now is just mix this up and put this into a jar and then use it as you need it. I use this a lot for certain chicken recipes, which tonight's dinner will have this on it. So, if that helps at all. Because like I said, I thought I'd done a video on it. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of other recipes out there. So, as I always say, I hope you find, if this one doesn't work for you, I hope you find the recipe that's out there for you. Because, we all are different. We're all different. We all like different things. I like spicy. You may not. Of course, my level of spicy, my husband says, is just ridiculous. But we're all different. We are all different. And that is one of the beautiful things about social media. Is that, if you don't like a recipe that I make, there's other people out there making things. So, I hope that you find it. And guess what? If you don't want to go looking, but you come across this one, you're like, you know what, I'm going to try it. But then you try it and you're like, there's just something missing. Play with the recipe. Make it your own. If you don't like basil, don't add it. You don't like thyme, don't add it. Don't like garlic, well, I would still use the garlic, but maybe decrease it from a tablespoon to half a tablespoon. So that's the great thing about the kitchen. You just gotta, I hate to reference something that old, but it's exactly what I taught my kids, which was the little engine that could, you keep chugging, you get to the top. So you just gotta keep trying. You'll eventually find what you like. And that is the beauty of us all, okay? So I hope that you make this. I hope you like it. And if you don't, like I said, I hope you find the recipe that's out there for you. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day. And you know what? I also hope you have yourself a very wonderful weekend.